All right, welcome everyone again to the second and final part of our Team Saltire event, our awards ceremony. Welcome to you all in the auditorium and to all of you online. I was very surprised to see that out of the 40 people who had registered to attend online, we have 150 views. That's just the joys of trying to communicate research with a broader audience, which is everything that this award ceremony is about. It's been a pleasure to exchange with so many of you during the exchange, hear about what you've been up to, some of your research, and I'm really sorry if I didn't have the time to speak to all of you, but I did try to make an effort to go and speak to most. It's been truly interesting to see the breadth of the research topics, the collaborations, the exchanges, both cultural and academic, and the fantastic opportunities that you have all capitalised on thanks to this funding. On behalf of the Scottish Government, the SFC, ScotGem, and all of the other consortia that have been involved in facilitating this programme, we want to thank you and congratulate you all on your fantastic exchanges, whether from reaching out from Scotland to our continental neighbours or being willing to come over to our wonderful Scottish shores. Before we get on with the actual awards ceremony and showcasing some of the videos that you submitted, I'd like to invite our final distinguished guest for the day. Professor Andrzej Jaśczyk was the Vice President and Chair of the ERC Scientific Council and Working Group on Widening European Participation. Now, I got a little bit of fun fact from Andrzej earlier, is that he's a professor of telecommunications at the University of Technology in Krakow and somehow landed himself as a board member of the Museum of Japanese Art and Technology. Maybe we'll get to hear a little bit about that, or maybe you can ask him later on at our drinks reception. Andrzej.
Thank you very much for your introduction. And good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here in beautiful Scotland. I had an opportunity to walk across the city in the afternoon, so weather was lovely, which is probably not typical here, but yeah, so I'm representing here the European Research Council. Yeah, you probably heard that name. We fund frontier, high-risk, high-gain research. Yeah? And this agency was established 15 years ago, and it appears that it is quite successful in channeling European taxpayer money into best minds of Europe. Yeah? It is worth mentioning that our grantees received 12 Nobel Prizes, 3 Nobel Prizes this year alone, yeah? So it's not a bad result. And researchers associated with Scottish institutions have a prominent role in ERC as well. They received almost 300 grants. This is a very good number, taking into account the number, the population, number of researchers here. Yeah? As you probably know, ERC is open to everyone. So researchers of any nationality from any country can apply for ERC grants. The catch or a prerequisite is that to get funding, it is necessary to work in a research institution located within the European research area. And European research area means that this is a country that is a member of the European Union, or a country that has signed an association agreement with the European Commission. And 16 countries have signed such an agreement, or including, for example, Israel, Norway, Ukraine. Unfortunately, the association agreement that had been negotiated between European Commission and the UK has not yet been signed. Yeah? We are still waiting, and we are hopeful. However, the good news is that researchers from the UK can apply for ERC grants still. They can apply. Their proposals are evaluated as any other proposals. But the point is that if such an application is successful, it can be funded only if the association agreement is signed. So we hope that by that time, such an agreement will be signed. The problem is at, say, higher levels of politics, and hopefully the problem will be resolved. Of course, there are some other options. So if a proposal is successful and the association agreement is not signed, the project can be moved to some other country within the European research area, or can be funded locally, which is also an opportunity. There is also some other possibility, even if the association agreement is not signed, that is a synergy grant. Within our portfolio of grants in ERC, we have 5 types of grants. And one of those types is called synergy grants that involves 2, 3, or 4 principal investigators. Because we generally fund single principal investigators in all our other schemes. But within synergy grants, it's up to 4 principal investigators, and one of those investigators can be from outside European research area. Yeah? Anyway, St. Andrews University from here has 2 synergy grants now. So, but I do hope that in near future, we will have again UK on board, and researchers based in UK will be able to apply on, say, on equal terms and get money from ERC, because it would be an enormous loss to both European Union and to UK if such an agreement is not signed. So I wish you good luck in applying for ERC grants. Yeah? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrzej. And I'm sure that Scotland itself will be looking at making sure that we secure those partnerships with Europe and continue our partnerships, potentially even if England doesn't want to. Now to move on to our awards. As part of your exchanges, ScotChem and the other funding consortia provided a number of opportunities for training and networking, including today's programme. Where we benefited from the brilliant masterclasses, and I'm sure you'll join me in thanking our fantastic speakers for the breadth of opportunities that they provided us. And again, please be on the lookout for the masterclasses that were recorded and will be made available post-event that you didn't manage to get a chance to be a part of. Now, a little caveat, not all of them were recorded because they were not necessarily suitable for that method, but do look out for those other opportunities. However, we also asked you to do the very brave thing, to take part in our public engagement competition. So we asked all of you to come up with those 3-minute videos that capture your research and the value of collaboration in an accessible format suitable for a non-expert audience. Some of you decided to target a general audience, like that you would have in, for instance, a science festival. Some decided to target the young in our society and targeted high school students or primary school children. And others even decided to tackle our policymakers and try and influence change. Sharing with non-expert audiences, particularly if you were in the masterclass with Penny earlier on, is one of the hardest things that we have to do as academics and researchers. Finding ways to explain some of the most complex concepts while not losing the meaning of it all, keeping a captive audience, and to get them to engage with what we are doing. It is part of how we communicate the true impact of our efforts to the public, but also it's used to influence and inspire others that we are tackling the big issues that matter to them. We received more than 70 videos to be assessed by our panels, and I'm really happy to be able to share our shortlisted videos for all of you tonight in the categories that were available for you to submit to. Unfortunately, one of our categories only received a single entry, so I'd like to take this special time to give a special commendation to Dr. Juraj Sikra from the University of Strathclyde, part of the SIXA consortium, who submitted their video against the Civil Security for Society category. Now for the other categories. We'll be showing you the top videos in each category. Obviously, we do not have the time to show you all 70 of them. I had the pleasure of watching all of them, so if you want to know more about them, please do ask me. But this was a learning exercise, and I cannot stress more that if you want feedback on how we looked at your videos and what we thought of them, just ask. Contact us at Scott Chem, get back to us, and we'll be more than happy to keep using this opportunity as a learning exercise for yourselves. But despite the winners that will be announced today, we also wanted to give you, the audience here in the room and online, the ability to choose for yourselves which one is your people's choice. So there will be a time for voting after the first awards are given, and you'll be able to use, I think it's a Slido link, which will be made available on the screen for you to go. If you have a smartphone, there you have it. So first, to our first category. Before we move on, make sure you take some notes. There are several videos to watch. Make sure you remember which one's your favorite. Our first category is under the Horizon Europe second pillar, and their focus areas is on health. From furthering our understanding of our own human bodies to tackling some of the disease that afflict us, whether it is for improving our physical health or our mental health, we need to constantly work together across boundaries to tackle our future health. In this theme, we've received many great submissions. Our panel, however, decided to select the following shortlist.
Over the average 75-year lifespan of a human, the heart will beat over 2.3 billion times. This beating allows the heart to deliver oxygen-filled blood that is returned from the lungs to the rest of the body. And it can do this because the heart is actually a muscle made up of lots of specialized muscle cells called cardiomyocytes. When blood needs to be ejected from the heart, these cells can contract and shorten, which squeezes blood out of the heart, and they then relax again, allowing new blood to enter the heart and for the cycle to repeat. The strength at which this contraction occurs is what we call cardiac force, and the heart must be able to adapt this force in order to meet the constantly changing demands of the body during rest and exercise. As you can imagine, the maintenance of the system is critical to sustain life, and every year over 160,000 people in the UK die from heart and circulatory diseases, meaning during the course of this 3-minute talk, one more person has died. In many cases, damage to the cardiomyocytes has occurred, meaning the heart cannot function properly and cardiac force is reduced. This is known as heart failure, which is a leading cause of death worldwide and of which there are still very few effective treatments. For my project, I wanted to understand the factors that influence cardiac force in a healthy heart and how these are changed in disease. And I was able to do this by analysing pieces of cardiac tissue from healthy and failing hearts. One of the things we know is that the heart contains small molecules known as fatty acids, and these are important for maintaining normal heart function. However, I saw in the failing hearts there is a higher level of these. This led me to ask the question as to whether this increase in fatty acid is related to the loss of cardiac force that we see in heart failure. To investigate this experimentally, I took some healthy cardiomyocytes and treated some of them with fatty acids to mimic what I saw in the heart failure samples. But is there any difference in the force they produce? Well, with the support of SALSA, I was able to set up a collaboration between my group at the University of Glasgow and Professor Jolanda van der Velden's group at the University of Amsterdam. Here, I was able to learn the technique of isometric force, which is when you take an individual cardiomyocyte and you pin it between two microscopic needles. One of these needles can sense changes in force, like when a cardiomyocyte contracts, and provides this as an output, as shown for the control cell here. What I found was when I repeated the experiment with cardiomyocytes treated with fatty acids, they showed a reduced force compared to the control cells. This was a really exciting finding, as it may suggest that the increased fatty acids we see in heart failure are contributing to the reduced force that's observed in this disease. This opens up a whole new avenue for us to learn more about how cardiac force works and, importantly, work towards new heart failure therapies.
My name is Dr. Fiona Murphy, and in my research, I'm interested in how particles in the air we breathe can have harmful effects on the lungs. Every day we're exposed to particles in the air from a wide variety of sources, including those naturally occurring in the environment, particles from exhaust fumes and air pollution, or in dusty workplaces as may be found in the construction and manufacturing industries. Most particles are easily removed from the lung and have no effect. However, repeated exposure to certain types can trigger harmful responses, such as ongoing and excessive inflammation, formation of scar tissue, and the development of lung tumours. The methods we currently use to investigate how particles can cause toxic effects in the lungs rely heavily on the use of rodents. Mice and rats are often used as a surrogate for humans in experiments designed to simulate real-life exposure to dusts. However, as well as being very expensive and time-consuming, this approach is increasingly considered to be unsustainable, limited in scientific value, and ethically questionable. Therefore, we need new methods to investigate the potential toxic effects of particles in the air we breathe in order to ensure population safety. However, this is no easy task due to the complex nature of the lungs. The extreme region of the deep lung, called alveoli, where gas exchange happens during normal breathing, is also where the smallest particles can travel through. The alveoli are composed of multiple different cells, including lung cells whose normal function is to facilitate the gas exchange with the blood system, defense cells of the immune system that remove foreign objects and fight infection, and support cells that help to maintain the proteins and scaffolds to give lungs structural support. The aim of my research is to see if we can take this knowledge to build a simplified lab-based model of the lung for testing toxicity of particles. In order to do this, my plan is to grow each different cell type in contact with artificial scaffolds which mimic the lung tissue in dishes in the lab, and integrate the different elements together to generate a combined lab-based model of the lungs. This model will then be exposed to the particles we wish to investigate and the toxic responses measured. In order to achieve this, I need help from others in the field. Funding from the SALSA Emerge scheme allowed me to visit the Adolphe Merkel Institute in Freiburg, Switzerland, to gain first-hand experience in working with complex artificial lab-based models. As well as technical training, this visit gave me the opportunity to build collaborative relationships with others working in the field, which will help further advance my research in this area as I move to my first lecturer position at the University of Strathclyde. I'd therefore like to thank SALSA for this opportunity, and also Professor Rothen Rittenhauser for hosting my visit.
The brain is the central headquarters of our body, which means it requires the best protection from toxins and pathogens. Enter the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a tightly knit layer of cells separating blood vessels from the brain, consisting mainly of endothelial cells as well as various central nervous system cells. It controls what goes into and out of the brain. Small molecules possessing the right physical properties, such as glucose or oxygen, are let through, while other, for example, bigger molecules, are stopped. However, this mechanism is not fail-safe. African sleeping sickness is a tropical disease found in rural Africa. It is caused by a microscopic parasite Trypanosoma brucei, which is spread by a tsetse fly bite. If untreated, the disease is fatal. The main challenge in treating African sleeping sickness arises from the parasite's unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and attack the brain. Only 6 treatments of varying effectiveness and side effects are currently available, of which only 4 are effective at the stage when the parasite has invaded the brain. We urgently need new drugs against African sleeping sickness. Dr. Gordon Florence and Professor Terry Smith groups at University of St. Andrews are amongst many labs worldwide working on the new drug candidates against it. However, if no foreign chemicals are supposed to cross the blood-brain barrier, how can these drugs reach the brain? For a drug molecule to cross the blood-brain barrier, it needs to possess just the right combination of physical properties, such as its size, solubility in water, and many others. While we got much better at predicting such properties, often we just don't know if a drug will get into the brain until we test it. Historically, we have used animal models. However, in test tube or in vitro, tests are cheaper, quicker, and avoid animal use. Winfried Neuhaus group at AIT developed such models using human-derived cells grown on a semi-permeable plastic membrane. By adding chemicals on top of this membrane and monitoring their levels over time, we can get an idea of how quickly they would penetrate the real blood-brain barrier in humans. My work involved adapting this model for testing of the compounds synthesized by the Florence and Smith groups. Adopting this technique at St. Andrews would not only speed up the development of drugs against African sleeping sickness, it would also benefit drug discovery against other diseases affecting the brain, from Alzheimer's disease to depression, as well as adding to the cutting-edge animal-free techniques used in Scotland. This collaboration between University of St. Andrews and AIT was made possible by ScotChem and the Saltire European Exchange Award. I would also like to thank Dr. Gordon Florence, Professor Terry Smith, Professor Winfried Neuhaus, and all the group members, as well as you for your attention.
Now I'd like to invite Dr. Kirsty Hewitson, the Interim CEO for Innovate UK KTN, to announce who the winner for this category is.
And the winner for the health category is Maria Zakharova.
Now our next theme is culture, creativity and an inclusive society. This category received submissions from researchers who are looking at understanding how we communicate, how we interact with each other, and what we value as a society. Our panel selected the following shortlist.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Robson and I'm interested in the places that matter to people and why. We all have places that are important to us. If you were to think of somewhere right now, it might be a place where you've lived or somewhere that holds special memories or that you associate with particular activities. A place that's important to you might also be special to other members of your family, your friends and your wider community. These collective associations, memories and feelings are referred to as social values. All sorts of places can have social value. My research is specifically looking at the social values associated with historic places, such as this Iron Age monument, which is Duncallow Broch on the Isle of Lewis. Historic places and the stories they can tell us about our shared past have enormous potential to contribute to a more socially just and environmentally sustainable future. But in order for that potential to be realised, we need to understand what these places mean to people today. Many historic places are managed by heritage organisations, which are responsible for conserving the physical remains and maintaining the values associated with the site. This can be a complex task because, as you can see, people have different opinions about a site and therefore how it should be conserved or used. In making management decisions, heritage organisations try to understand the significance of a place. However, traditionally, they have struggled to find ways to identify and assess social values. Missing out social values or treating them as secondary to other management priorities can leave people who care about a place feeling disregarded and even result in conflict between communities or with the managing organisation. During my PhD, I completed the first comparative review of social value assessment methods to see what might be most appropriate for heritage practitioners to adopt as part of their day-to-day work. Based on my experiences assessing the social values of 7 historic places in Scotland, I developed a toolkit of guidance and advice. The social values assessments revealed many varied ways that different groups of people connect to and use these places. Capturing this diversity required a range of methods, so rather than proposing a single approach to assessment, the toolkit is flexible, with modular components that can be combined and adapted as needed according to the situation in which it is being used. Having developed the toolkit working with Historic Environment Scotland and based on Scottish examples, my Saltire exchange to Norway allowed me to see how my research findings and the toolkit might apply internationally. The research was well received, resonating with heritage practitioners' own experiences and the challenges they faced in working with the Norwegian context. Going forward, I intend to build on this experience, sharing the toolkit more widely and working with academics and professionals to help achieve more inclusive and participatory heritage management.
My name is Haley Austin, and I study the creative industries, including comics and video games. I wanted to find out more about Sweden's female-forward creative industries, what makes them unique, and why there are so many women working in them. I traveled to Stockholm, Sweden to interview people and find out more. I also wanted to see if you could ride horses there, strictly for research purposes. In Sweden, there are comics everywhere. Libraries have entire floors of them. They're also used in museums as art installations. My interviews revealed that comics are a valued part of Swedish culture. In the UK, comics are still considered low art or just for kids. But in Sweden, almost everyone has read a comic and interacts with comics regularly. Why so many women? Comics and fanzines in Sweden have a long feminist history, as women popularized the mediums in the 1990s. Different organizations have been established that elevate the work of women. There's also government funding for people to take time off work and create art. Women are drawn to this and want to draw more, including me. I made a travelogue zine about my experience in Stockholm. I may have found a few horse comics, too. Stockholm is also home to over 100 video game companies. I talked to one-woman studios and large international companies. One stole my horse girl heart. Star Stable is a horse game marketed specifically to young girls that has a sisterhood-driven message. It has been the #1 browser game for girls internationally for the last 10 years, and they use comics to attract more players. Star Stable also fosters female talent in the creative industries. They have a female CEO, and their staff is comprised of 54% women and non-binary people. Why so many ladies? It appears that more is being done at industry and government levels in Sweden to foster female talent. In Sweden, people get 18 months of paid maternity and paternity leave. Companies like Star Stable also make conscious efforts to promote women to leadership positions. When they can see other women succeed and have support, more women are drawn into the industry. What are the impacts of my research? For Sweden, I gave an outsider perspective on their strong creative industries while noting a foreign retention problem. For the UK, I pointed out changes that need to be made for a more female-forward creative industries, like a different work culture, paid maternity and paternity leave, creative arts funding, and hiring and promoting more women. But the #1 takeaway is that we need more horse games and comics, right? right? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Rosie Priest and I am a postgraduate researcher at the University of Stirling and the National Galleries of Scotland. So when cultural policy talks about young people and culture, it overwhelmingly talks about the role of collaboration. And this will, according to cultural policy, lead to positive impacts and changes within young people when they collaborate with publicly subsidised cultural organisations. But this leads to two things happening. The first is the creation of a correct form of culture, and whilst cultural policy doesn't overtly say that one form of culture is better or more important than another, by focusing only on arts institutions, they are unwittingly delegitimising cultural practices outside of that. So when we think about culture, we often think about traditional arts, things like visual art, theatre, dance and music, but culture is so much bigger than that. You can have skateboarding culture, graffiti culture, gardening culture, even things like underground rave culture. And of course, what cultural policy is really talking about is the traditional arts aspect of culture. The second thing that happens when cultural policy discusses collaborating with arts institutions in order to have positive impacts on young people is creating the idea that young people need to change and they need to do so through these institutions. The problematization of young people, the fear and the moral panic surrounding teenagers is furthered by the idea that it is teenagers who need to change. So my work, which will kick off in September, is going to explore what happens when we take cultural organisations out of the equation altogether. And I will be working with an organisation in Malmö, Sweden called Culture Crew, and they focus on supporting young people to create their own cultural events, projects and programmes. And their move towards young person-led projects is a significant shift from how things are done in the UK. It signifies a massive change in power, and it allows us to see what culture actually means to young people and what is the culture they themselves want to generate. And this, of course, could inform the work of cultural policymakers, those working in cultural organisations, as well as young people in the UK wanting to develop their own projects. My work will be supported by Malmö University, who have a flourishing faculty of culture and society, and the faculty is a creative and energetic place. I will be working closely with the acclaimed research group Medea at the university to consider ways of sharing my learning in exciting and new accessible ways, things like zines, podcasts, and even exhibitions. And I will also be presenting my research at Malmö University throughout my journey. I am very excited to start exploring youth-led projects and thinking about how we can share academic learning in new and accessible ways.
And Kirsty again will come over and let us know who the winner is.
And the winner is Rosie Priest.
Unfortunately, Rosie's not able to join us. As you heard from her presentation, she's still in Norway, and she's actually delivering a talk at Malmö University tonight. So Kirill Sharapov from SGSSS Supporting Consortia is accepting the award on her behalf. Now on to our next category, making sure I stay on track. So we're looking now at the next category, which only will have two shortlisted video as we received a lesser number of submissions. So this will be on digital, industry and space. Undoubtedly a category which is actually probably even harder to communicate to a non-expert audience. Here, researchers submitted videos on some of the most complex ideas to communicate. From physicists who study our universe and the laws that govern it, to computer scientists who work on improving our digital infrastructure, or why some universities constantly ask us to change our passwords. Our panel selected the following shortlist.
If you wanted to pick a universe that looks like the one we have, how would you do it? As with any other recipe, the first step is always to get the ingredients right. But truth be told, getting the correct ingredients is not so easy when you have so many options to choose from. To give a few examples, a universe needs to have a certain shape, a certain expansion history, a gravity theory, and a particle model. Within this, the current standard model of cosmology assumes the following ingredients: a flat universe, an accelerated expansion, general relativity, and a dark matter component. But several studies have shown that assuming dark matter does not work very well when trying to explain some of the properties of galaxies and galaxy clusters. Because of this, the University of Bonn in Germany and the University of St Andrews in Scotland embarked on a collaborative project to test a universe that uses different ingredients. In this new model of the universe, instead of assuming dark matter, we assume that we have a particle known as a sterile neutrino. And instead of using general relativity, we use a new gravity theory known as Milgramian gravity. This is how a universe made with these ingredients looks like at a scale of 20 million light years. The way to test whether the simulated universe is a good reproduction of the real universe is to look for analogs of some real and well-known astronomical objects within the simulated universe. These well-known astronomical objects that we choose to look for are the galaxies in the local group, mainly the Milky Way and Andromeda. In our simulation, we found two pairs of galaxies that match the total mass, mass ratio, and relative distance of the Milky Way and Andromeda. Therefore, we conclude that our proposed universe model seems like a good candidate to reproduce at least some parts of the real universe, which hopefully means that we are one step closer to finding the right ingredients for the universe recipe. I would like to give a big thank you to the Saltire Research Exchange Program for funding my visit to the University of St Andrews and for making this project possible.
Have you ever asked yourself, what makes a microwave plate rotate? Or, what makes a fan spin its blades to cool us in summer? They all have electric motors. The motor is the one that causes the spinning, which makes everything happen. Now that you know how valuable motors are, I want to tell you some of the challenges that electrical engineers face when designing electric motors. My name is Diwanji Banda. I am a PhD student in the School of Computing at Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. My research is addressing two of the many challenges that electrical engineers face when designing electric motors. The first one is heat. And the second one is time. Now, let us go through the two problems one by one. When the motor is running in the microwave or fan, heat is produced as a result of friction. And soon, the temperature inside the motor begins to rise. Engineers do not like this heat. The heat makes the motor inefficient, reduces its lifespan, and can cause damage. You don't want that, do you? In my research, I have set out to model heat in the motor using artificial intelligence techniques. My heat or thermal models will help engineers control the heat in the motor to make it more efficient and durable. Now, let us look at the second problem, time. To design a motor, electrical engineers are faced with multiple and often conflicting objectives. Think of a situation where they want to design a motor that uses fewer materials and at the same time one that is efficient. When they try to do that, they realize that as soon as they start reducing materials, to make the motor cheaper, the motor becomes less and less efficient. As you can imagine, a good motor design is one that is a compromise between the conflicting objectives. Now, think of a situation where there are 3 or 4 objectives. This must be so challenging, don't you think? The good news is that optimization algorithms are available that engineers use to identify optimal motor designs. And the bad news is that the algorithms take too long to find optimal motor designs. I am talking of days, sometimes weeks or even months of continuous processing before the computer finds good motor designs. My research is trying to address this problem so that engineers do not have to wait too long to get their designs. In the end, we all want motors that are efficient, durable, and environmentally friendly, and my research is contributing to achieving that. Thank you very much for watching my video.
Now I'd like to invite Morag Campbell, Assistant Director in the Research and Innovation branch of SFC, to tell us who the winner is.
Okay, and the winner is Tiwongi Banda.
Now again, unfortunately, Tiwongi cannot be with us tonight. He's still in Aberdeen, but Stuart Anderson from SIXA, the awarding consortium, has agreed to accept his award. Just in case, Tiwongi, if you're online, I know you're registered to be online, I hope you are pleased to know that you have been a winner in this category. Unfortunately, we don't know who's actually watching. Now to our next category. Again, it's a category where we will only show 2 short list videos because of the volume of videos that were submitted. So now to climate, energy and mobility. With COP26 having been held in Glasgow just last year, and COP27 only just concluded in Egypt last week, climate, energy transition, and impact on an ever more mobile society is probably the most frequently talked about topic in general audiences through our media and countless new documentaries that hit our screens on almost a weekly basis. Here we received submissions from researchers who seek to find the solutions needed to tackle climate change or inform our society and policymakers on the true impact of our decisions and the way we live our lives. The shortlisted videos are
Hello everyone, I'm Ben from Heriot-Watt University and this is my flash presentation highlighting my PhD project, the study of elastomer blends for improved tyre performance, which is in collaboration with the German tyre company Continental. Tyres are vital to modern day global transport, and with over 15% of greenhouse gases coming from road vehicles, even small improvements in tyre efficiency would result in a considerable reduction in worldwide emissions. As you can see from this image of a dissected tyre, tyres consist of a lot more than just a hunk of rubber. In fact, their multi-component design has now led some experts to regard tyres as the most complex component on any vehicle, which I was quite surprised to find out during the start of my PhD. When designing a tyre with the materials we have available to us today, one must take into consideration the performance trade-offs described by the magic triangle of tyre performance, in which improvements in one direction often lead to detriments in the others. For example, improvements in fuel efficiency can lead to worse wet grip performance, which leads to poorer safety and handling, along with reduced abrasion resistance, which leads to more microplastic pollution and tyre waste. Therefore, this project aims to understand how the molecular properties of tyre rubbers impact the overall tyre performance, as an understanding of this relationship would help expand this triangle through refined composite formulations. There are many components in tyre rubber, but the main focus of this project has been studying the interaction between what are known as the elastomers and resins. The elastomers consist of relatively flexible, long chains of molecules and are the main components of tyre rubber, whereas the resins are short-chain polymers that are added as processing aids, but also have a large impact on tyre performance. Their use as processing aids allows for greater dispersion of the components within the rubber, which improves abrasion resistance. However, their impact on the mobility of the elastomer chains can vary. Generally, resins which are well mixed are said to increase the mobility of the elastomers, which can increase their elasticity and improve fuel efficiency of the tyres they comprise, whereas resins which do not mix very well can essentially clump up and reduce the mobility of the elastomer chains, which in turn can reduce fuel efficiency but improve wet grip capabilities. However, this relationship is not so cut and dry, which is why we are trying to gain a further understanding of the molecular level relationship with its real-life properties. So, how are we studying these rubbers? So far, we have done a lot of work using solid-state NMR, which relies on the magnetic properties of the molecules to gain insight into their behavior. We have also started work using radar, which is a novel approach that may prove useful for material testing in real-life environments. And we will also be using dielectric spectroscopy, which probes the electrical properties of materials and gives insights into their motions and structure, which we'll be accessing in Hanover, Germany, through our collaborator Continental. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope this has given some insights into the magical world of rubber.
Hello, my name is Toby. I am a chemist and currently doing my PhD in Wuppertal, home to the wonderful Schwebebahn and also one of the rainiest cities in Germany. And I have decided to do my research visit in the rainy city of Glasgow, Scotland, but more to that in the end. I am a polymer chemist, trying to synthesize various types of materials in my lab for electronic applications like lasers or quantum computers. The research focus of the working group I visited lies on conjugated polymers as sustainable photocatalysts for solar fuels production. What does all this mean, you might think? Let's take a closer look at one of the concepts in this rather infant research field, the hydrogen evolution reaction, HER for short. In a nutshell, the idea is to throw some polymers into water, let the sun shine on it, and that's how solar fuels like hydrogen are produced. No, not these plastics, more like this polymer panel. In reality, it's of course not as sketchy and simple. This research topic is quite new and has huge potential, so let's look a bit deeper into it. In this footage, you can see a thin film of active material coated onto glass. The irradiation with a light source causes the water molecules to split in a chemical reaction. Chemists have been familiar with the so-called electrolysis of water since 1789, the process of using electricity to decompose water into oxygen and hydrogen. Hydrogen is nowadays an essential part for energy, mobility, and the challenge to reduce climate change. But the stone-old electrolysis consumes more energy than the produced hydrogen provides, so scientists try to find more sustainable ways to generate solar fuels. Our approach are printable photocatalysts from conjugated polymers. These plastic electronics are chains of molecules capable of conducting electrical current that aids in the splitting of water. Similar to solar panels, the source of energy simply could be light from the sun. To improve the water splitting, it is convenient to add certain compounds and increase the electrochemical reaction. But this complicates the printing on a surface. Hence, we tried in this ScotChem project to chemically bond these additives to our polymer chains. Through that, we maintain the solubility of the materials in subsequent coating and increase therefore the efficiency of the hydrogen evolution reaction. The success of this novel concept led to innovative new projects to further investigate the water splitting with our materials. The ongoing collaboration between Wuppertal and Glasgow would not have been able without the support of ScotChem. I am grateful that I had the opportunity to broaden my academic scope, but also to visit the beautiful Scotland and create unforgettable memories. Thank you so much for your attention.
And I'd like to ask Morag again to let us know who the winner is.
Okay, and the winner of this category is Tobias Mensah.
And now to our final category. I hope you've been taking notes because they're still to come. Your own choice. Food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. Bit of a mouthful, and I think because it's so whole-encompassing, also ended up being the category that received the most amount of submissions. It was by far our most popular category, and therefore our panel selected 5 videos to be shortlisted from pure quality of what was selected. We just could not let some of these go. Also, in this category, because it was so tight, we decided to award 2 winners because they ended up with exactly the same score. Submissions in this category the work being done by our researchers is work in our oceans, understanding the impact of carbon on fauna and flora, modelling our emissions in the atmosphere and the impact on our environment. Our 5 shortlisted videos are:
Freshwater fish are a critical source of micronutrients and income for many rural communities across the world. Fish provide nutrients that are highly bioavailable, which means they are easily absorbed by the human body. In the Kenya part of Lake Victoria, rural fishing communities rely on freshwater fisheries for income and food. In these communities, fish are the main and sometimes the only animal source food consumed. Men do most of the fishing, while mainly women are tasked with the processing, drying, and cooking of the fish. Unfortunately, fishing pressure has increased, and the increased competition for fish might be affecting local livelihoods and food security. The University of Stirling in Scotland and the Institute of Marine Research in Norway have partnered to design interdisciplinary methods for understanding how fish catch and consumption in the Kenyan communities around Lake Victoria is affecting people's food security. In this project, we're asking questions like, what happens to fishers' diets when the fisheries start to fail? Are fishing communities transitioning to other livelihoods, and if so, will they change what they eat? Will they eat less fish, perhaps abandoning traditional recipes for convenience food, as we see in other parts of the world? And what does that mean for their micronutrient intake? These questions are particularly interesting in contexts like Lake Victoria, where aquaculture is on the rise. Does cultured fish provide a substitute for wild-caught fish in fishers' diets? Does aquaculture support fishers' transitions to alternative livelihoods? Our partnership was funded by the Marine Alliance for Science and Technology for Scotland. This grant funds an exchange, where researchers are working side by side to develop methods that will contextualize the micronutrient composition of these food samples within the diets of the people consuming them.
I think it is of utmost importance to work interdisciplinary if we are going to reach SDG 2, zero hunger, and 3, good health and well-being. Interdisciplinary work can be challenging, and in my experience, it often takes time to learn each other's languages, jargon, and ways of thinking.
Hi, I'm Beth, a PhD student at the University of Glasgow. Here's a 3-minute talk about my research, an exchange visit funded by the Saltire Emerging Researchers Scheme. That's 10 seconds already. Let's get going. Carbon, the building block of life, is constantly on the move around our planet, from the atmosphere to the ocean, to soil and living organisms. The ocean is a major sink of carbon, meaning it takes up more carbon from the atmosphere than it gives out. Atmospheric CO2 dissolves in surface waters of the ocean, where it is biologically fixed into organic carbon by phytoplankton and other macroalgae through photosynthesis. A fraction of this carbon sinks to the sea floor, where it is buried in accumulating sediments. In addition to marine sources, terrestrial organic carbon delivered by rivers or glacial runoff also contributes to carbon storage in marine sediments. If undisturbed from activities such as dredging, carbon can be stored in marine sediments for millions of years. That's cool, but why should we care? Well, marine carbon storage, also known as blue carbon, provides a vital service to our planet by regulating levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Blue carbon is therefore a nature-based solution to mitigating climate change and can help us to keep our planet cool. Something that scientists, including myself, are still trying to figure out is how climate change, and in particular a warmer and more acidic ocean, is affecting carbon storage in marine sediments. To help address this, I'll be visiting Umeå Marine Science Centre in Sweden as part of my Saltire exchange visit. I'll be conducting mesocosm experiments using their state-of-the-art facilities on sediment cores collected from the seafloor and investigating carbon burial in marine sediments. I'll test what happens to carbon when it lands on the seafloor under warmer and more acidic ocean conditions. How will rates of carbon storage be affected? Will microbes thrive or be in distress under warmer and more acidic conditions? And how will this affect rates of carbon remineralization? Which microbial species are responsible for carbon breakdown? By addressing these questions, we will be able to determine the future potential capacity of marine sediments to act as efficient carbon sinks and continue their key role in mitigating climate change in a changing world. Thank you.
I'm Emily Haig, a PhD researcher based at Heriot-Watt University and one of the awardees of the MAST Saltire Emerging Researchers Scheme. My research focuses on marine mammals, that's whales, dolphins and seals, and how anthropogenic activity, i.e. humans, affects them. One aspect of my work explores the potential effects of small vessels and craft, like speedboats, paddleboards and fishing vessels, to marine life. I've been working on this in the coastal waters of Scotland, but as part of the Saltire funding, I got the opportunity to expand my horizons and visit a European-scale H2020 project known as the Saturn Project, which is working to better understand underwater radiated noise from large vessels. To do this, I visited two Saturn-associated research institutions, MARI, the Coordinate Institute of Saturn based near Cork in Ireland, and the Marine Bioacoustics Lab within Aarhus University, Denmark. I got the opportunity to connect and meet with some of the researchers and colleagues connected to the Saturn Project, including Saturn Project Coordinator Jerry Sutton, who walked me through the multi-institution project, the goals, the plans, and the progress made so far. Saturn Project Science Communicator Amy Dozier then took me through the project's outreach strategy and showed how she develops a fantastic array of multimedia resources, including illustrations, videos and newsletters, which provide a platform for the cool research being undertaken within the project to be shared and translated into the world of public and policymakers. I also got to meet many fantastic researchers working on the Saturn Project, including postdoctoral researcher Dr. Charlotte Finlay, who's based at Aarhus University, and is modelling how a reduction in vessel speed can reduce the amount of underwater noise produced and therefore might reduce their overall impacts on the marine soundscape. Also based at Aarhus, Dr. Laia Rohano Donate is using physiological data from tags to explore the energetic consequences of vessel disturbance on Europe's smallest cetacean, the harbour porpoise. To encourage networking and collaborations between Scotland and European institutions more widely, I coordinated workshops in both Ireland and Denmark, inviting along researchers from all visiting institutions and further afield, welcoming all career stages. We discussed how our past or present research relates to the topic of human impacts on the marine environment, and spent a day getting to know one another's research, sharing ideas, building new connections, refreshing old ones. These workshops connected people across countries, across institutions, despite different study species or topic. We were all united in a collective interest in understanding and protecting the marine environment. Since the workshops, the new connections forged have led to attendees across institutions working together on multiple publications, funding, fellowships applications, sharing data. It just goes to show the power and importance of getting people together and of being excited and open about the science that you do.
Hello everyone, my name is Hannah Ewan. I'm a PhD student at the University of St Andrews and my research focuses on carbon transport and Scottish sea loss. Anthropogenic activities have led to an increase in detrimental gases such as CO2 in the atmosphere. Gases such as CO2 cause climate change, which has severe impacts across the entire globe. A range of technologies are being developed to limit the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, but we also have natural systems that do some of this and need to be fully understood and protected. On land, for example, trees take CO2 from the atmosphere, convert it to organic carbon and use it to grow. They can also transfer the carbon to the soil. In the sea, we have sedimentary carbon sinks. Sediments store large amounts of organic carbon. This carbon comes from many different sources. At the sea surface, phytoplankton take up CO2 just as the trees do on land. All marine organisms are made up of organic carbon. However, when these organisms die off, they sink to the sea floor. The organic carbon is super tasty to bacteria on the seafloor. However, this can result in CO2 being released back into the atmosphere and contributing to climate change. So we need organic carbon that is not as tasty to bacteria, and preferably a lot of it so it becomes buried faster. So another really important source of organic carbon to the sediments comes from the land. When it rains, some of the organic carbon stored in the soils gets washed into rivers, and from then gets transported to the sea and the sediments. Because of where this carbon comes from, and the processes that it has already undergone in the soil and river, this carbon is less tasty to bacteria and can be stored effectively in sediments. In Scotland, sea lochs are incredibly important natural sedimentary carbon sinks. My study area, Loch Etive, is surrounded by peatlands and peaty soils which are very rich in organic carbon. On the west coast of Scotland, it rains a lot, and the organic carbon gets transported by rivers into Loch Etive. But what happens afterwards? Let's have a look inside of the loch. The peaty organic carbon is not tasty to bacteria, so we are particularly interested in what happens to it when it enters Loch Etive. We know that a lot of carbon is stored in Loch Etive, but how much of the carbon that enters Loch Etive stays in Loch Etive? How much goes further, and what role exactly does circulation play in where the carbon goes? Models can help us understand such processes. The Saltire Fund enabled me to visit TU Delft in the Netherlands, where I developed a model for Loch Etive using the modelling software Delft 3D. This model shows how water moves throughout the loch and will be used to assess how carbon moves throughout Loch Etive.
Hi, my name is Magnus. I'm about to start my second year as a PhD student based at both Edinburgh Napier University and Harriet Watt. And as part of my project, I went to the west coast of Sweden to assess the biodiversity and ecological status of natural European flat oyster beds using soundscape analysis, eDNA, and visual surveys. This was done in collaboration with the Swedish Environmental Research Institute, IVL. European flat oysters are important as they filter the water, store carbon, increase biodiversity, and more. These flat oysters used to occur in dense beds throughout Europe, but have been declining severely during the last 150 years, mainly due to overfishing. And therefore, restoration is needed. So critically, to date, there is no effective standard method for rapidly evaluating restoration success, and that's where this project comes in. Since Sweden have denser natural beds than Scotland, it was of great value to be able to investigate these. So, in Sweden, I was first identifying beds of different oyster densities, and along the density gradient, I studied the ecosystem visually, acoustically, and by using eDNA, which in short is short for environmental DNA. So visually, we counted the species present along 10-meter transect lines, and later this data will be analyzed by, for instance, looking at species richness, and diversity indices. And by using an underwater hydrophone, I listened to the soundscape around the oyster beds over several weeks, both in spring and summer, and the recorded sound will then be analyzed by looking at the complexity of the sound, as well as sound pressure levels at different frequencies. And thirdly, by sampling eDNA, it can be estimated from shed genetic material what species that may be present in an area. And finally, by combining these, comparing the different methods, it can be determined what pros and cons there are with the different tools and how they can be used together to generate an effective rapid assessment tool, which hopefully could be helpful for the oyster restoration projects all over Europe. Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to invite Professor Jajcic again to let us know who the winners are.
And the winner is food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. There is no.
On the inside.
There are two names. Hannah Ewen and Beth Langley.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all for your submissions. Now comes the time in our event where we will ask you to let us know what you think was your favourite. So the vote is now open. We'll just have a short video we're running in the background reminding us of the submissions. Please use the Slido link, whether you're in person or online. Please vote for your pupil's choice. Checking how many of you don't have service. There's a free Wi-Fi that you should be able to connect to, so make sure you use the Wi-Fi code to get onto it. There's plenty of time to do your vote, so don't worry about this. We'll just ask our AV team to put the QR code again at the end of this first reel, if that's possible. Thank you. Okay, and the results are in. I feel like I'm on Strictly Come Dancing right now. But no, thank you very much. I can't quite express how much of a pleasure it's been to meet all of you in person, to have the opportunity to listen to you, to hear a bit more about what you've done. We really look forward as an entire cohort, as the SFC, the Scottish Funding Council, and all of our speakers, to see where you guys go from here. This is a great opportunity for you, and we hope that you've been able to seize it, and we've noticed that you have seized it, and we really look forward to seeing where you end up thanks to this funding. Before we announce the People's Choice, I just really want you, online and in person, to join me in thanking all of our submissions, not just the ones that we submitted tonight, but also the ones that we couldn't showcase. Thank you very much for taking part in this exercise, for seeing the value of communicating your research to the general audiences. So I'll invite Andres again to do the pleasure of announcing who the winner is.
And the winner is Hayley Austin.
Now, this brings us almost to the end of our proceedings. We have a drinks reception upstairs, so please, when this is all finished, please just make your way through the little doors and go upstairs. Just to reassure you, we won't be exiting right back through this main door, but your affairs, your coats, and whatever you put it into the cloakroom has been moved to where you will be exiting. So don't worry, we're coming down here, but all your stuff will be where it needs to be. So for our final remarks, I want to invite Professor Suzanne Holden, our very own Communications and Strategy Officer at ScotChem. If you give a special welcome to Suzanne for all the work that she's done in enabling today and throughout the entire Team Saltire programme of activities. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks, everybody. Look, it just remains for me to say thank you to Alan, first of all, for a masterful master of ceremonies. It's been quite a day, and it's not an easy job going between. You know, it's not like you just present your presentation and you're off. So well done, Alan. That was fantastic. Thank you. I'd also like just to say a huge thank you to the judges of the awards, including Alan, who judged every single one of the presentations. But our judges were amazing. They, you see the variety that they had to look at, and in very short time frames. So the judges were just amazing, and we are incredibly grateful for the time and effort that they put in. And believe me, it was no small feat, and they took it really seriously. You'll see the quality of what was produced by yourselves, and that was hard call to judge. So thank you to our judges. We would like to thank the Scottish Funding Council and the Scottish Government for funding the Saltire programme, the Saltire exchanges, and of course Team Saltire. It's been an absolute pleasure and really quite an honour to manage the Team Saltire programme. It has given us an insight not just into the amazing stuff that's happening in chemistry, but gives us that amazing insight into what is happening across all disciplines, the collaborations that are happening, the interdisciplinarity. It is really quite humbling, and we are very proud that that is happening in Scotland and Europe. As Alan said, we're going to head up to the rooftop terrace. It's a beautiful location. There are drinks and a bar. There are some challenges moving through the museum. It's a Victorian building, so some of the lovely National Museum Scotland staff will be there to help us as Alan said, your coats and bags and things, if you're not leaving immediately, then they will be taken to the exit where we will be leaving, which is the tower on the other side of the museum, but they will be very carefully transported. They're very good at doing this. I would also like just to thank the amazing team at National Museums of Scotland and at the John McIntyre Conference Centre. They have been outstanding. We Are Cameron, we could not have done this without We Are Cameron, our amazing AV suppliers, and they've just been behind the scenes doing all of the audio, all of the video, all of the live streaming, and believe me, live streaming on YouTube is not a joy. So thank you to them, and also to Hickory Catering for the catering this evening. All that it really remains for me to do is thank you, because without you, without the fact that you had the gumption to apply for the Saltire programme, to go on the exchanges, to make videos, to come today, to attend the events that have been happening online with your consortia, as well as your consortiums, as well as with Team Saltire, none of the programme would have been possible. So thank you so much for your participation. It's really exciting to see the research that you guys are doing, and you are the leaders of the future. We are really excited to see where you go from here. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you. Be safe. Safe journeys home, but please do enjoy the hospitality upstairs. Thank you. I'm sorry, just one last thing. Could the prize winners just come and make sure we have your contact details, please? And we also have bags for your awards. Thank you. So if you make your way out here, National Museum Scotland staff will assist you up to the rooftop terrace. Really?